So, Chris, I'm going to send you a photo of a fairly famous game we both played a lot, and I'm just
Okay.
asking you to remember what you can about this character or this part of the game's story. And for the listeners who cannot see the photo, this is a blue troll-looking creature from probably an SNES Super Nintendo generation game.
Oh yeah. I mean, uh, yes, that I'm surmising from it.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I don't.
It's
Oh
it's fine
wow.
if
I
you
mean,
don't remember
I
anything.
know. I know it's not from Zelda. Oh, you know what?
Right.
This is from one of the Secret of Manas, isn't it?
Yes. There's only one Secret of Mana, but
Or Manas. Well, I didn't know the series. Like, I know
yes,
there's
yes,
more
yes.
than there was a Secret of Mana too, wasn't there? But it wasn't. Was it
There were
released in the
other of
U.S.?
Mana games, Legends of Mana, and I don't know if there was actually Secret of Mana 2, but there were certainly follow-ups to and many Mana games. Any
Okay.
which way, this is
Okay.
indeed Secret of Mana. It is the boss, the Frost Gigas. Does that jog any memories for you, or shall I fill in your memory about this creature?
That doesn't ring a bell. No.
Okay, so in the middle of this game,
Uh huh.
very very fun fantasy adventure game set in a fantastical world of dragons and magic and other sorts of wonderful things. We land in a winter town where Santa plunges into despair. Yes, Santa, over the fact that most children don't believe in him anymore. So he tries to use the power of a mana
Of
seed,
course. Uh
the
huh.
MacGuffins of this
I
game.
forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he wants to grow a magical Christmas tree. However, the power corrupts him and transforms him into a frost monster instead.
Of
This
course.
is a very out of left field portion of this game. There's no other fantastical creatures from uh, everyday mythology. This is a fantasy world entirely, except for Santa Claus and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is also in it. He has you to help Santa. Sent you a
Of
couple more
course.
photos for context. Um, but yes, I thought for this, as we're heading into the holiday season, it would be fun to relive this strange memory of Santa being turned into a boss monster in Secret of Mana.
Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Then they will rate that game.
So welcome to Two
Yeah,
Brothers Play a Game. I'm Josh,
I'm Chris.
and this is a
Not a
podcast where
frost giant
we,
and not a Santa. Just
yes,
putting that out there.
children, any children listening, remember that if you
Yeah.
stop believing in Santa, he will turn into a monster and try to kill you.
hmm
So keep that in mind at
I
all
want that
times.
Christmas special. That needs to be a Christmas special. Just and not even resolved, not even turning back to Santa. Just like he's a frost giant now. Don't go to the North Pole.
So, in this podcast where we talk about frost giants and other things, we also play a
Yes.
game we found on sale for Nintendo Switch, and
hmm
we do a fun segment in the front half of the podcast, and then discuss and review the game of the month in the back half of the show. This month, we are talking about the mystery game Return of the Obra Dinn.
Yes, which I
That
kept
that was a
like
question.
botching
There's
the
no
name
question
whenever I
mark
would.
in that.
No, but I kept botching the name slightly if I like searched for it and anything like that. I'm like Obra Dinn, Mystery of the
Obra
Obra Dinn,
Return
Return, Return to the Obra Dinn. Yeah,
Obra Dinn 2 Return of.
Electric Boogaloo.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so, continuing on with our holiday segments, we are going to
Oh
talk
boy.
about the seasons of thankfulness and new resolutions that we
And
are
skipping over
heading
Christmas
into
entirely,
slash
like
coming
any gifts.
into.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
keep talking over you.
we got the Christmas season as well in there. We're trying to hit as many
Sure.
as we can, at least a handful of them. So for a fun little segment, I have written a few things that I am thankful for when it comes to gaming and made a couple resolutions. Do you have any? I tried to give you a little forewarning so you could prepare a
You
little. Do
did.
you have anything you're thankful for or
I
a
didn't
resolution you want to mention?
like. I didn't think through a lot. I will admit. I think I had more resolutions. um, in because there's some things that I want to see, but that's a whole nother thing. I could easily think of the like thankful things, um, 2 to 3, and this was like in all of our years of gaming. You said, which is
Sure.
a lot of years, a lot
Rather, yes.
that we don't want to talk about. I would say I am I'm thankful for. I feel like we bonded the most with Pokemon. Um,
That's pretty good.
I maybe you wouldn't say that yourself, but I felt like that when we both started playing Pokemon. Like it was a good game for siblings. I feel like because you could each have your own cartridge that would be a little
Hmm.
bit different, and you really needed to work together to get all of the Pokemon because
Right.
of that.
That
So
brilliant money making slash sibling bonding experiment that Nintendo created by
and that's
branding
still
multiple
going.
games. Yeah,
So
they took that so many ways.
they did. Now now it's using utility objects like Pokemon desk lamp and Pokemon refrigerator probably are like the next ones. I don't even know. I know those no related to each other, but they might as well be called that. So, but no, that's one thing I've been thankful for is actually Pokemon. As weird as that is. Um,
It
two,
probably is.
oh, go
It
ahead.
probably is one of those games where we talked so much about strategy and like, oh, what's your starter Pokemon gonna be? And I know destroyed a Nintendo Power magazine that we had that showed all the starters and the first few portions of the game, just trying to analyze,
Mhm.
who we wanted to be our starter Pokemon.
I just found our old Pokedex game guide. Big, I mean, big game
The
guide.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But we
those
had
were
that
fun.
we would always refer to. Kids, this was before the internet, or at
Yes.
least before the internet was was enough bandwidth to hold all Pokemon. And so you had to have these big book game guides that had fold out posters of like use this type against this type and yeah. So
Those
um
were fun. I miss
but
those
I did find
honestly.
that. Yeah. So I did find that. So Pokemon, yeah. Did we want to
Um,
take turns? Did you have something?
yeah, let's take turns. So my first thing that I'm thankful for is backlights on games. I don't know if you remember when we're talking about
Okay.
classic Game Boys.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I thought
we
that's
w-
what you mean.
yes, the original Game Boy didn't have a backlight. I don't think the Game Boy
Mm-mm.
Color did. I don't think the Game Boy Advanced even did. I think it wasn't until the DS
Not sure.
and
Yeah.
thereafter that there was actually enough light coming from the screen to see in a variety of different conditions. So it was tough back in the day when you had your Game Boy and there was a shade, there was too much shade. It was an overcast day,
Mm-hmm.
or worse yet, you're trying to play Batman on the way to grandma's and dad drives into a tunnel and all of a sudden all the lights gone and Batman's only got one life left and all the bad guys just showed up and so you're holding it to the window of the car just hoping those little light flashes you get off of the tunnel lights are going to give you enough information to save Batman and save the day.
Oh
Batman
yeah.
died quite a few times to unfortunate shadows.
Yeah. That
uh, that's wonderful.
I remember us going through so many different Game Boy lights as well that you would
Hmm.
attach on, and
Right.
we like none of them were perfect, so we couldn't settle on one. Like nobody made the perfect Game Boy light. Some of them would stay on but not have enough light, and some of
Hmm.
them would have great light but they just would not stay on. So you're like holding it while you're playing, like
They went through
oh,
batteries so fast too. Like
mm-hmm,
I remember the one that was just like a big magnifying glass you strapped to the front of the Game Boy, and it had
mm-hmm.
just two tiny little lights underneath it to light up the screen.
Yeah,
And it was great when it worked, but somehow those two tiny little LED lights drained so much battery.
they did. Oh man, I probably still have some of these, by the way, somewhere.
Hmm.
I know I still have the old Game Boy. Just by the
It's
way.
It's unfortunate
But
that we have so many things that really do belong in a museum
I
at this
do.
point.
We do.
So, how
Yeah.
about another thankful or resolution from you?
I I know I should have been thinking about this a little bit. I would say I'm thankful that there was kind of like a video game expansion resurgence. I would say with PlayStation 2, as weird as that is, but like um I know I'm going very like deep philosophical stuff, bonding over video games. And but it like for the longest time I think it was mostly just Nintendo, and PlayStation had some popularity, but I don't feel like PlayStation quite took off the way all Nintendo systems did. And
Hmm.
it and I know this. I know I say many times of a video game history class, but I'm gonna bring it up again. But I did take a video game history class. I know things. They did talk about like the PlayStation 2 became like this hugely selling system that kind of revolutionized it all. Like I guess like Atari was actually before we were born, even before I was born. I know I was born for a lot of big things that you don't remember, like Cool Ranch Doritos, but um, the Atari was a huge deal because it was the first video game system and has sold like so much and brought it
Hmm.
about. But they were saying in the class that PlayStation 2 was like was actually the next big system that really
Hmm. That
launched
was a
tons of
very big
things.
one.
And yeah, to what it is now. Like it wasn't Nintendo. Like Nintendo was extremely popular, but it didn't quite do the same thing that Atari did, and it was really like PlayStation 2 that did. But I mean, we both have PlayStations now. We were very much Nintendo system people. You had the PlayStation.
We both have the Nintendo Switch too, given
Yeah.
our podcast.
I mean, but we've kept up with it, and like,
This
yeah.
podcast is not brought to you by Microsoft. Really like that Halo game, though. That was great, buddy.
We do. It's been, yeah, yeah. So, oh,
Um, Another thing that I am thankful for is I'm actually going to go a little controversial and say
mm,
remakes. I
okay.
I love like when I find out that there's a new remake coming out that I'm excited for. I There's that sense of nostalgia, just the sense of fun and excitement. I really enjoy um, that feeling, that sense. There's of course Final Fantasies coming out and
Yeah, like all six of them.
Rebirth, yeah, um, and everyone's talking about well, hopefully one day we get a Knights of the Old Republic remake, and just there,
Hmm.
it feels like a wonderful way to preserve video game history and reintroduce it to a new generation that probably missed the last one. Just taking the highlights from the past and bringing them back. People kind of feel it's overdone. It's not novel anymore. But especially with some of these big remakes, that's not just a slight graphical up enhancement, but a full re-envisioning. I think that's really interesting, and I enjoy that, and it does just make me happy.
If you have one more thankful thing, you might want to go into that because I have a resolution that stems from what you're saying.
Well, I mean, if it segues well, you could resolve differently. I said it
All
was
right, because
controversial.
these are yeah, and I have a controversial one I think too. Maybe not so much the way I think a lot of gamers are feeling after these last couple of years, though. But for next year's resolutions, if I
Go
could
ahead.
just jump into that, it is that companies would allow video game makers to complete their games at
Mm,
launch.
hmm.
Because I think that's actually hurting it. So where it's stemming from what you're saying is those nostalgic video games that they're remaking were
Hmm.
complete and were so good that it's so far like standing the test of time. Like you just have to
Hmm.
update it a little bit. but I mean, I know there's Super Mario RPG, there's a Final Fantasies, there's I know I'm forgetting something that probably came out this year that was big remake, but maybe not. But those are two. Those are at least two big ones that came out this year that are
Hmm.
huge to have. But that's a funny thing is you and I have played them, but we
Right.
love them, and so we're wanting to play them again. And I know a lot of other people who are excited about playing them again that are that have that are our age and have gone through it. So I feel like the fact that those were so good and so complete and they're standing the test of time, like I'm sorry to say a lot of the games that have come out this year I don't think are going to ever have remakes because they just are not good
It's
enough, like
possible.
so.
I mean, I think that that would have been the case, in the 90s and early 2000s when a lot of these games that are being remade now were like, yeah, they were the highlight. Final Fantasy VII was the highlight, but there was also 100 other RPGs of a similar vein that will be forgotten, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
probably, the code wasn't well cared for, and now it's just gone and lost to time. And that's unfortunate, but also at least some of these things are being saved for the future. One
But there's
remake that's been announced, but is probably still a long ways off, is they're remaking the first Witcher game. And back when Witcher 3
oh.
came out, I went back and I played Witcher 1 and 2 and 3 all in a sequence. And Witcher 1 has a great story, and probably the gameplay was fine
Mm-hmm.
for the era it came out in, but that was a really boring game with a great story behind
Hmm.
it that
Oh.
that doesn't hold up. But I bet the Witcher remake, built on the Witcher 4, the Witcher 3 engine, will be pretty cool and be like a nice way to experience that great story and framework that they built, but with modern gaming um, abilities, gameplay, and display abilities, presentation.
Hmm.
I'm excited for those sorts of things. I get it's not for everyone, and kind of what we're going to be heading into in a little bit is talking about a game that prizes novelty. Like this is a game
Mm-hmm.
unlike you will ever have played before, and probably will never get anything quite like it again. So I'm talking about doing the same thing over again, and shortly we're going to be talking about something that's never been done before.
Which there's still room for that, but but my resolution for the gaming industry is like I, the biggest game that I've been playing pretty regularly is Hogwarts
Mhm.
Legacy, and it is very fun. I like it. It's one of the only games that I've wanted to do everything in, and I haven't had that in a long time. But it's just that fun. However, there's some pretty heavy glitches in it, which is
Mhm.
not good, and and that's a huge problem. I mean that like you they had to complete it, and it's a big game, but yeah, it's got some issues, and it's the same issues that everybody has, and I've seen people talk about it, so it's not just me. It's really it has some bad kind of glitch issue things, and that just makes me sad. I mean that happens way
Yeah.
too often in with video games, and there's been some blunders. Jedi Survivor came out this year. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I think so. We're about in the last year. I know
Yeah,
that one had
that
a pretty
was
rough launch as well.
yeah, which is I mean that should have been a huge launch and a huge win, but it that's all I really remember people saying about it. I haven't played it still.
Mhm.
That sequel,
Same.
so yeah, but I
It,
haven't heard
it
anything about Spider-Man 2 though, so I'm hopeful about that.
yeah, I didn't hear too many problems. Probably, a handful, because that seems to be the case with any AAA game, is because of financial motivations, they are being
Hmm.
released at a time when they're not done, and they'll be fixed later because they need to get the income started or something, or
Yeah.
make those quarterlies, which is very unfortunate. You see a lot more out of games that don't have that kind of financial pressure, but also, those
Hmm.
games are much, much smaller. So
True,
the reason
but
they
I
can
mean, I think that's
exist.
a lesson, you know,
Hmm.
too. But that's just my opinion. Yeah.
I will finish this segment out with one little resolution for myself, and that is honestly to make a little more time for the big games. I always make time for games as service games. Genshin Impact. I used to play Destiny a lot. Those sorts of games that don't really have an ending, but they always have something to do and always are very fun. And then they get you kind of worried that you're going to miss out because they have a constant event going, something to be playing the game right now. And those are great. I love Genshin Impact. Been playing forever. But I'd like to make a little less time for the games as service games and a little more time for the big titles that I'm looking forward to. Like I want to go back and play Final Fantasy VII Intergrade and then play Rebirth when that comes out in a couple months. And Spider-Man. I never played Miles Morales, and then Spider-Man 2's here, and that's wonderful, and everyone's having a great time. So those are some games that I'd like to make time for. And people always talk about the make the time for the things that are important, and so gaming perhaps is arguably important, but it is important to me. So I'm
Yeah.
going to try to make some more time for the the true big stories and games that I know will be thrilling to
I'm just
experience.
gonna laugh because it's like the way you're describing it. It's like the spending more time with family. It's like spend more time with video games,
Yeah,
and you've got
I spend
your
plenty of time with
wife
family.
and and the whole like just trying to tell um, your wife that you have to play video games because it's your resolution, and
Makes sense to me.
that's funny to me too. But
Shall we go to Return of the Obra Dinn? Are we ready to talk about the big game?
sure, return of
Return of
Electric
the
Boogaloo.
Obra Dinn. Yes, Return of the Obra
Yeah,
Dinn.
yeah.
I'm genuinely getting confused by this. So
Sorry.
this is a very interesting game. I'm actually going to jump ahead in my notes to some of my final thoughts because I had some notes in there about the creation of the game. This game was made without financial pressures by a single person named Lucas Pope, who uh, produced the game Papers, Please, and was making sufficient income off that game so that he did not feel pressure to put this game out right away and took a lot of time with it, largely making this game himself. And he talks about how he started with some simple demos, tested them out at gaming shows, revised, came back, and then this game kind of ballooned um, into a much larger game than it was originally planned. Like the scope of this game expanded quite a lot over the development process. Probably uh, it was implied a little larger than he had wanted. So that was very interesting. I was very interested, I guess, to hear it was done by just one person. That's a fantastic amount of talent to be able to do all the things in this very unique game. And it is a game where the story is a voyage. The sailing of the Obra Dinn took place about 5 years ago, and the ship was lost. And then in 1807, the ship mysteriously returns with no hands on deck, and you are an investigator, insurance investigator specifically, sent to figure out what happened. So we've got this good premise for a mystery, and then to make this all work, you are provided with a strange but surprisingly effective magical item, which is apparently somewhat commonplace in this. This is like an insurance man's tools,
Yeah.
because this seems like something work sent you basically, and it's this pocket watch that when you hold it up, when you open it up near a dead body, will allow you to experience the last moments of that body before it died. So that is a very unique tool when you come across, like, that's the perfect
Oh
tool
yeah.
for when you come across a ghost ship full of bodies. And it's contrived, but it's also delightful and fun. And the game kind of puts out to you that you need to get on the ship for the purpose of your job and identify each person aboard the ship. You have the manifest, so you know the names, but you need to connect the names to the bodies and figure out their manner of death. And as you do so, you will learn the story of the ship as well. But that's the main goal is put the names to the people, and then and also list their cause of death and if there was a killer, who that killer was. And there's 60 names, 60 people on board, so it's quite the job to
Hmm.
do. That took me a surprisingly long time. I did manage to beat this game,
Wow.
though I nearly gave up quite a few times. So, anything about describing the game you want to touch on? Otherwise, head into presentation. What do you think?
It's a good pirate game.
There's no pirates. There is
There's kind of pirates.
piracy. There's
Yeah.
some degree of piracy.
There's a
There, so I guess that technically, when you commit piracy, you become a pirate.
well.
There's very little pirates.
There's some other things that pirates do that happen in the game without trying to spoil some things. But
Fair. That I think I know what you're getting at. That's uh, I guess.
there's some
I don't know if I
creatures
fully
that are
agree with that
piratey
statement.
as
What do
well.
you think about the presentation?
I actually think the presentation was really good with how it looks. Um,
Hmm.
that it kind of surprised me because it just is very basic's probably not the word, but when you first look at it, it seems very basic, like
Hmm.
very simple graphics, but it was very effective. It was a lot more three dimensional than I thought it would be,
Hmm.
and even the modeling of a lot of the people surprised me quite
Hmm.
a bit at how that was turning out. So, um, yeah, I thought it was very, very good. I was very surprised at that. So, um, very uh, line art probably be the way to put it. Um, those kind of graphics, but again, like very effective. I liked how there was different types of screens that you could decide to have. Um,
Right.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
caught that and change the way it kind of looked in that way, but um, no, I thought at first it was hard to take in, and then it was a very cool effect that would happen. So
It's a very stylish presentation for anyone that hasn't seen it or is just kind of doesn't. You can see a little bit on our YouTube podcast version of it as well. But it kind of reminds me of old Atari games with like Asteroids or Battle Zone, where it's a lot of hard lines, monochrome, either in like a white or a tan or a green, and uh, I would describe this as vector graphics. I'm not sure that's accurate, um, uh, in a technical
yeah,
term, but that's kind of from a layman's term how I would describe it. And it's very interesting. I think the big thing to note is this is a 3D exploration mystery game, without largely without color or just one color. Um, and it's just presented against a black background, and it is very compelling. And also, it is in essence like those old Atari games. However, it is a much nicer, fancier, more modern level of detail, because you do need to pay attention
hmm
to a lot of detail in this game. How about the sound? Did you enjoy because there's a lot of very interesting musical cues and very nautical themed, not quite shanty, but exciting music that you might hear in a pirate type movie, used. And the sound effects are also a thing that I think is pretty dramatic in this game. When you go into those moments when someone died, the visual is frozen in time at the moment of their death. But the sound, you get maybe 5, 10, maybe even 20 seconds of the last sounds they might have heard around them. And so you hear people talking and you hear sounds of death. There's a lot of violence in this game for a very simple graphical style. So
Hmm.
you will hear and see some truly terrible things that happen to this unfortunate crew of the Obra Dinn. But be aware of that going in, and also it was impressive how much detail they managed to put into this graphic,
Oh
this
yeah,
simple, stylish graphical scene.
yeah.
And
No, that this the dialogue. That's what impressed me with the sound was the full sound dialogue that you would get of
mhm,
conversations um, around the scenes that you would encounter. That was kind of impressive and amazing to have as well. So
mhm.
the sound
Yeah, their
was
sound
excellent.
effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sound effects were top notch. The music was very interesting and dynamic and exciting. And the other, this is largely a one man game, probably except for
Hmm.
maybe some voice actors, because it wasn't
There
one
were
man doing all the
differences.
voices, thankfully.
No, yeah,
That
yeah.
would have been weird. How about we move on to gameplay? How
Sure.
much did you enjoy this very unique, just created for this game? And I believe this was a game where the mechanics came first. I think I read a little bit that he developed this concept of re-experiencing this last moment of somebody's life and telling a story that way before he actually had the story of the Obra Dinn and this
Hmm.
mystery aboard a ship. So this is kind of this is really what the game is about, is this mechanic of exploring people's the last seconds of their life and this freeze frame moment of what was happening around them.
Hmm.
Did you enjoy that, going into all these memories or uh, moments of death?
So yeah, I actually did. Like at first, I wasn't getting into the gameplay. Like I really,
Hmm.
it was actually frustrating me in some ways at first because there
Hmm.
just wasn't a lot to explain all that, and I wasn't really sure where to explore or what I was trying to find. Like there's just
Hmm.
not a lot, which is very interesting. But that's part of I think the mystery of it. And but once I got going, like once things were kind of showing like, oh, this is how you go through it all. It was actually really compelling. Like it's a game that I found like I kept wanting to go back to and kept thinking about and going like, okay, I need to
Hmm.
get back into the game. I think there's something over here, and I got to go find that and uncover it. So I was just surprised at how much I enjoyed um, just the simple. I mean, it's simple gameplay. It's really you're exploring, and then you have the pocket watch, and you find the victims and press a button,
Hmm.
and then go and see kind of the scene and press another button. But
Hmm.
you had to. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's menus, but it is rather interesting how all that was used together to make some very different gameplay than I've ever had before. So yeah.
I also experienced that kind of initial frustration of what am I supposed to do, and we've had this conversation before of how much should you tutorialize a
Mhm.
game, and this game chooses a very minimalist approach. It's not quite zero tutorial, but very interestingly, it often had a tutorial after I did a thing. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't know what button to press, but I'd say, "Hey, maybe I'll hit the X button here," and it'll be like, "Ah, when you're focusing on someone and you hit the X button, you can go straight to where this person is in a diagram, so you can kind of connect this still drawing of the crew to this body that's right in front of you." And it's like, oh, that's strange that you would tell me after I did the thing how to do the
Yeah.
thing. But I guess that kind of provides a little extra clarity for the purpose of this game. Um, it, I One of the things that I really wish you'd explain more is this is a mystery game. And as it turns out, it's a mystery game that requires you to pay attention to a lot of very small details about the setting and people's relationship to each other and their attire and what they have. in their immediate surroundings, what they're doing, but it doesn't tell you what to pay attention to initially.
Mm-mm.
So I made it through basically all of the scenes of this game, which there are quite a few. I guess like 40 or so scenes, nearly one per passenger on the ship. The 60 people were aboard the Obra Dinn. And uh, when I got to the end of it, I started to realize, oh, I need to go back through all those things again because I wasn't paying attention to nearly the right things. And that was fine-ish, but also I did find it, the backtracking that was involved in this game a little unfun. I enjoyed the process of discovery very much, but the little walk I need to take to exit a scene, the little walk I need to take to get to the next body so that I can do the next scene, the little loading screen, which we're playing a port on Switch, so not the beefiest of computers
Mm-mm.
on hand, but that little loading screen, it's those little times add up, and this game is a lot of walking around, and also you're trying to hold all this mystery information in your head in between this 30 or 40 seconds that it takes to get from scene to scene over and over, and you need to revisit them and whatnot, and that can be a little tiresome and a little extra challenge that I found frustrating and discouraging. uh,
I I mean I actually agree with you in some ways of I don't know if you had this frustration the most out of uncovering clues, but it was the easiest thing the easiest thing to find out because you're looking back at the time of death is you could easily figure out how they died, how somebody
right,
died.
right.
But I had such a hard time with the the names, like associating the names of people to stuff,
Hmm.
and it even kind of I feel like gave you an instruction that threw you off. I don't know if you had this the first time. Where it was like, well, we can't say this for sure. You've got to keep playing until you can confirm this. And I'm like,
Hmm.
great. So now I'm second guessing if I really figured out this name or not, and that kind of bothered me. I wish that had been a little bit better at giving you names, and having that. Like I would pick up on some in the dialogues, but it because sometimes you wouldn't. The dialogues were doing like sort of the load screen thing. You don't know who they're talking to, so
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, the dialogue that you hear isn't attached to any name. It's You can kind of assume, you do know when the deceased is speaking. There's a little X by those lines, so you know what the deceased is saying, but that's
Oh,
the
see, I didn't even pick up on that actually.
yeah. And again,
Okay,
that's not tutorialized at all. It's just, why
yeah,
are these lines different? Oh, often they're like, and oh no, and ah, and things like that. You're like, oh, that's the guy that's dying. Um, but sometimes they did give you a few easy ones at the beginning, but really, I mean, when a few, I mean like two or three of the
mm-hmm.
60 people you need to identify with a simple thing like, oh, his initials are written nearby.
Yeah,
Oh, someone addresses him by name with,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to spoil any actual lines, but somebody says something like, no, don't die, so and so, you're my best friend, and you're
Yeah,
like, ah, this is so and so, and
yeah,
he's got a connection to this person that's standing next to him. Okay, that's something I could go with. They only give you like two or three of those,
oh yeah,
and then after that, it becomes this like, how are you supposed to identify these things? I could see, like, when I got to the so it locks in correct answers in groups of three when you have the full name, cause of death, and any killer, if there is one, associated with each individual scene. And once you have that perfectly correct, and you have three of those things perfectly correct, it will lock those in and tell you that's correct. You can, you are right, and it notches those into your book. Um, Shoot, where was I going with that? Oh no. Um,
frustrations with things. Is that
Names. Yeah, I am having trouble understanding how to podcast even after this game. It uses so much brain space. Like you said, the cause of death is often very clear, but trying to get a name associated. Oh, I think it was just like I just didn't know what to pay attention to. And also, this game is kind of like an interesting logic puzzle, an interactive logic
Hmm.
puzzle, where, Sam has a red house and he lives next to Samantha. And of course, they all choose S names that sound nearly the same in these logic puzzles. And Samantha only likes apples. So Samantha has an apple tree nearby in her neighbor's yard that she picks apples from. And so you really need to make these deductions and assumptions based on their relative connection to other people and build off
Hmm.
of that. And I was looking for more certainty, I think, when I went through the first part of the game, and looking for those, oh, obviously this has to be this, because that was spelled out completely. The game requires you to make quite a few assumptions, though. It requires you to make the assumption that this crew member never does anything that isn't their job. They only if their job is cook, you could expect to see them cooking. If their job is helmsman, they're going to be near the wheel. And they're never going to go into the rigging. That's only the topmen. They're never going to be carrying stuff around. That's only the seamen. Um, and if they're dressed a certain way, like everyone's always going to be in that perfect uniform at all times. Even though I feel like classic sailing movies, people dress as is comfortable for hard work in the open sea with water everywhere,
Hmm.
and might not be wearing their fancy hat because they're an officer all the time, or might not be wearing their fancy coat, or might be doing somebody else's job because they know how to do it too, um, and that sort of thing. And so basically, if this game is asking or giving you information that you could make an assumption off of, you basically need to count that as fact, which is something I didn't expect until I got to the end, which meant I had to go back through it again.
And that's where I was at too, because there's people that I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's the captain and that's the first mate, but I'm like, there's not anything sure about that, certain about that, and so I just didn't choose that. But you're right. Like I would see them in the same uniform every single time, so I'm like, well, I
Mhm,
think that yeah, like that's or like there would be a dialogue of captain, but like both of them would be in it. I'm like, well, so it seems like that's the captain, like, um, but it seemed too assuming. So
mhm.
yeah.
It was an interesting thing because there's no penalty for guessing or anything like that, but it does feel like the game is discouraging you from guessing. Like,
Hmm.
you could theoretically guess your way through this entire game from the once you have seen all the scenes once, and do that, and that's probably not the way it's intended to be played, but you could.
Yeah.
Um, Gosh, I'm sorry. I'm disconnecting from my train of thought so much in this. Where like I have a second thing I need to say here, but I don't remember what it was. Um, let's go to. Do you remember how
Sure.
many names you locked in, or how many chapters of the story you experienced?
Chapters. I know I went through at least four of the chapters. I want to say.
Okay,
I might have
I
even
believe
gone
there were
through a little bit
10.
more. Um, I feel like I got about halfway through. I think I might have been working on the fifth chapter
Yeah,
or
some of
however
the
it
chapters
goes.
are very short, one or two scenes,
Yeah.
while some of the early chapters have like 4 to 10 scenes, so they
Hmm.
they are the big part of it. Some big conflicts that happen aboard the Obra Dinn.
Hmm.
Very exciting. I thought that was super. Like, this is a very exciting game, especially kind of touching into our story segment before but not quite leaving gameplay yet. When you're only seeing these moments of life and death struggle, you're experiencing the story very rapidly, and in a very exciting fashion, which was fun. It was an interesting way of telling a story. But before leaving gameplay, I I think I'm just landing on this is incredibly novel, incredibly interesting. The mysteries, like the answers are there. Um, I did find myself having to guess toward the end just because I was kind of tired of running around and re-experiencing these scenes over and over. So I just started making a lot of logical assumptions and guesses and using a guide I found online that was like a hint guide. So it wasn't telling you what the
Ah.
answer is. direct you to where the clues were, and
Okay.
that was really helpful. That kind of sped it along a little bit, so I wasn't kind of blindly searching as much. Um, I
I would
wish.
point out. Oh,
Uh-huh.
sorry. Well,
Go ahead.
the a little bit of like in the gameplay and story, like there's a bit of frustration I would reach at times of you. I feel like you'd reach dead ends, like no
Hmm.
pun intended, but like you know you'd reach maybe like the end of a chapter, or like near the end of a chapter, and it's like you don't know where to go next, and you're not picking
Hmm.
up on where to uncover the next clue. And so
Hmm.
I would just be searching in like the same areas over and over and over again, and just trying to figure out what to do with that, because it just was a little hard at figuring out. That was one element that was a little bit hard to get through, and
I
there
think I
was
lost you
like a
again. Are you still
time of
there?
it. Oh,
Try again, because I'm still seeing some video.
are we back? Am I
Yes.
back? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Um. So there was a hard thing of trying to find the next clue, and it did leave me frustrated enough that like I put it down for a little bit of a time. I mean, a little bit of a time is like a couple days, 2 or 3 days, because I just was like, I don't know where to go, and I don't want to like keep walking around the same area to try to
Hmm.
figure that out. So I don't know if you ran into that at all. That was something I ran into with it.
I I did. The game, again, touching into story, but not quite leaving gameplay yet. The game tells the story backwards of what happens on the
Hmm.
ship, starting with the last thing that happens and then slowly working your way back to when they leave port and the first accident that happens. Um, and that's interesting that, experiencing a story backwards, that's fine. It's makes it does add to the mystery in a sense of by making it a little extra confusing until you've seen the entire story and kind of like play it back in your head in the right order. Um, but it does lead to this linear pathway. So you're on the only scene in this game is the Obra Dinn. You're walking around the Obra Dinn, the three-masted, four-decked ship. So a very large sailing vessel of 60 people, and it starts with one of the last scenes and you work your way through it, and each one tries to lead you to the next body, the next part of the scene. And in fact, parts of the ship are mysteriously blocked off until you've experienced enough of the ship, and then they mysteriously open uh, off
Hmm.
screen effectively. And that's fine as long as you see where the next step is.
Yeah.
If you get off track, then you're searching this very large vessel for the next body, and there's no real directional arrow or something to help you out to find the next step. And then on top of that is the idea of if you don't know what to pay attention to, you're going to run to the end of the story and realize I don't know anything about who was killed or how. I know a lot of causes of death and a handful of names, and that's it. So I need to go back through this and try to figure out what I'm supposed to pay attention to, what clues there are. I really wish there was some sort of Batman detective sense or something, or a list of how many clues have you actually spotted and noticed in your journal for each scene. So like, oh, there's a bunch of clues I missed in this scene. I need to go back and look around some more. Like something that just kind of helped you get back on track when you do get lost in this game. Again, one man, indie developed game. I understand why it's not there. I just think it would have been a better game if it was there and
When
more
I
fun for me.
and I was thinking too, like as much as I like the graphics of it, sometimes that would get in the way because of that as
Hmm.
well, because it was so monochromatic. Um, and even though it was 3D, it's hard to differentiate a few items and a few passageways, and so that kind of hindered searching things out entirely. So yeah.
There's this one moment in the game that not really a spoiler. You'll encounter it without any surprises, but you need to figure out who was the killer in this incident, but you can only see them through effectively a window. So you're not close enough that you can really make much of an identifying claim on them. You can't even highlight them to bring up the artwork, so you could kind of associate them with a different picture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what the game wants you to do is go back in time and figure out who that is based on what you can see through this window. However, because of the very simplified graphics, you're like, well, is he this humanoid looking person or is he that humanoid looking person? I
Yep.
think he had lighter pants. Like, I
Yep.
guess that
Something like
was
that.
probably this guy. You thought there might be something a little bit beefier that for you to grasp onto, and the very stylish, very cool graphics were counterproductive to solving these high detailed mysteries a little bit sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
which it just introduced quite a few little frustration points. Like, this game is very novel. I've never seen anything like it. It's an incredible work conceptually that I don't think the gameplay actually turned into what I found fun, unfortunately. Um, I think this is really a great game for people that like big, beefy puzzles with that are very challenging. I think somebody could really that was into that could really sink their teeth into it for a long time. I'm just not that person, unfortunately, and so it just kind of led me to feeling stupid and frustrated, which might be fair. I might just be stupid.
And are we moving into our
Yeah, story,
final
final
thoughts?
thoughts. We've kind of touched on things a
Yeah.
little out of order, much like this game. Any last thoughts or anything you want to talk about the story?
Well, it's not easy to talk about the story without revealing some things, but I thought the story
Hmm.
was really interesting. I
Hmm.
think that's maybe the most I could say without giving some things away, but it's a mystery story, and it was compelling, like to go through each of those chapters. So, yeah.
Um, my any other final thoughts? I don't know if I cut you off there.
No.
Okay. My last thoughts on the story were just that. Um, Gosh, I know I had one a second ago. I apologize. We're having some production issues that are combined with my own mind issues that are probably going to make this podcast a little more disjointed than other times. Hopefully,
Kind
Chris
of
can
like the
fix it in
story.
post. Yes, yes. We are doing it thematically, and we're going to chop this up and send it to you in a random order, and you get
We're
to
gonna
put it
go
together,
backwards.
listener.
Actually, it's gonna. That's
You have already heard the rating, and now you're finding out why it was rated that way. Let's see. Da, da, da. Um, I think the thing that I came to at the end of this is I enjoyed this game a lot, but it kind of overstayed its welcome. Um, I think I mentioned that I ended up using a lot of guesswork at the end, mostly because I just didn't want to go back through the sections and try to find these minute details for the fourth or fifth time. Um, and some people would really enjoy that, others wouldn't. It wasn't a game for me for that reason, but also I really respect this game for being this novel. Like, I understand why people
Mhm.
love this game. That makes complete sense to me. And unfortunately, this designer seems to really like his whole philosophy seems to be on novelty and creating these experiences unlike any other. His other game, Papers, Please, is about being a um, what's the word I'm looking for? You work at the border, you look at people's papers to see if they are traveling in a way that is
border
following the
border guard.
laws, like border guard, something like that. Looking at passports, a passport specialist. And it's like that's such a mundane sounding task, but he turned it into a fun game. Like that seems to be his idea of fun and creative expression is creating these very interesting experiences. So that said, I don't think he will ever make return of the return of the return of the Obra Dinn, or anything like that because it seems antithetical to his design philosophy. However, I really want that game now that I finally understand how to play Return of the Obra Dinn. Since it's a mystery game that I've solved the mystery of, I can't replay it, but I think I could do a lot better in the sequel. now that I know what to pay attention to from the get go and like what kind of assumptions I can safely make. Um, I I wish there was more, and I wish it was a little bit smaller and a little bit easier. So let's go into ratings. Would you like to go first, or shall I?
Yeah, I will go first.
Let's go for it.
Um, I would actually rate it with um, two thumbs. I thought it was
Hmm.
an excellent game. Like I said, I found myself wanting to keep playing it, which
Hmm.
I would have to say not all the games that we've played I've felt that way.
Hmm.
And but I found myself actually wanting to find out what would happen. I just was really amazed by overall the structure and the strange simple graphics of it. So I it was just good to
Hmm.
me overall. Yeah.
I think I'm going to only give it one thumb up. This is definitive. It was never at risk of a zero thumbs up. It feels like it was close to that two thumbs up for me. Um, but just the friction and frustrations I encountered with the game design and the gameplay that was so core to this experience were just a little too much for me to give it the two thumbs up. I think, again, if you love big puzzles, this is definitely the game for you. But I think I'm only going to give it one thumb up. How
Fair
about
enough.
the follow-up question of, like I said, I don't think there's
Yeah.
going to be a sequel, but do you want
No.
to play a hypothetical sequel?
And this is one of those that I have a caveat with it. Yes and
Sure.
no. And so I got to talk out what to actually give it for that. I would want to see a different story. I don't in
Right.
different setting. I don't want the
Mhm.
same thing. Um, I would want something advanced with it as well. Um, I think you could still do some of the same structure, but it still it needs to add something else that you do to uncover everything else besides the clock or and journal. I think, and just do something like you could do something 1920s as well. Maybe like a speakeasy would be fun, kind of
Oh, that would
thing.
be good. Yeah.
Um, so like a different story, but you got to add maybe something else. So I would like to see something
So do you think you'd
different
grab
in the
grab
sequel.
that hypothetical sequel on sale or full price?
I would say on sale though. Yeah.
Mhm. I am also an on sale purchase for a completely different reason. Of like I
Oh.
said a little bit earlier, I feel like I know how to play this game now, and I think I
Mm-hmm.
would enjoy a second try at a different mystery, a different game, and I would be able to catch up with the game faster, and I'd be
Yeah,
able to understand it and move forward.
that's my
Um,
feeling too. Yeah.
yeah, if you're kind of on the fence with this game, I might suggest that you maybe read one of those before I play Return of the Obra Dinn type articles
Mm-hmm.
to give yourself some generalized hints on how to play this game before, and you might have a slightly better experience. But obviously, there's going to be people that really want to figure it out for themselves, and by all means, go in there blind. It is a tough, challenging game, but people love it.
Yeah. It's not a casual gamer's game, I would say.
No,
So
it's very special.
yeah.
But that gives it a 4 out of 6, which I think is a very respectable
Mm-hmm.
score for Return of the Obra Dinn, one of our higher ranking games. And I think it very much earned every one of those points. Very unique, very
Mm-hmm.
novel, and something
But it
probably
didn't beat.
unlike anything you've ever played before or will play again.
Yeah, and I don't think it beat speed dating for ghosts. Is that
No, I mean, who could?
no?
That might be the pinnacle of our gaming lives is speed dating for ghosts. I wonder
Maybe,
if that
man.
game would hold up on a second play. I think it would. It was really, honestly, artistically, it has some similarities with this game a little bit with its simplified graphics.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
A little bit
but
of
yeah,
mysteries there too, but
that,
you have to
that
find
was our
out
game
through
for this
speed
one.
dating. So
Uh, so we had a holiday themed episode full of mystery and death, as hopefully your holidays do not have this year.
But
But
pirates, maybe pirates. You could have
yeah, maybe
some.
a little bit of piracy is always
Yeah.
fun. Next up, we've got another Chrono Trigger recap pod. We are nearly as confused about the order that things are happening in Chrono Trigger as we were in Return of the Obra Dinn.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. I enjoy it, even if it's a little chaotic. And then our game for January will be Hot Wheels Unleashed. So
Hot Wheels.
we are going from a game where you have to think a lot to no more thinking, just play with toys. It is a racing game styled after Hot Wheels, and of course, the courses are larger than life, as it were, because you are a tiny toy racing through a bedroom track or something like that. I'm very excited for this game. I used to play a game like it, uh, Hot Wheels like Stunt Track Racer, I think it was.
Yeah. I
Um,
thought. Yeah.
yeah, Stunt
I
Track
didn't as
Driver, Hot
much,
Wheels
but
Stunt Track Driver,
okay.
on the personal computer back in the day, and I'm excited to see how that evolved over like 30 years since Hot Wheels Stunt Track Driver was a mainstay in my life. That's something to look forward to, and our first racing game that'll be different.
Yeah.
You can send questions to two brothers play a game at gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and YouTube, where Chris is posting content at Two Brothers PAG. And that's kind of how to reach out to us. Please review us on iTunes if you have a chance. We'd really appreciate it. Trying to build up and grab a couple of extra listeners so we can share our thoughts slash nonsense with the world. Now that we've finished our holiday themed episode, Chris, maybe it's time for a vacation. Where do you
Hmm.
think we should go?
Well, mountains are nice.
This is life.